Behind the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace, a storm has been brewing for months, but what finally erupted has left King Charles genuinely shaken to his core. Insiders claim that during a recent phone call, Prince Harry unleashed a verbal tirade so shocking, so disrespectful, that even the most seasoned palace aides were left stunned. Word on the street suggests Harry didn't just raise his voice at his father. He allegedly swore at the King of England, hurling profanities while demanding cash like a petulant child who never learned the meaning of earning his own way. Let that sink in for a moment. The Duke of Sussex, a man who once wore the uniform of the British Army with pride, reportedly cursing at his own father, the reigning monarch, because he's furious about being financially cut off. Sources close to the situation reveal that Charles was left reeling after the call, struggling to comprehend how his relationship with his youngest son had deteriorated to this shocking level. Palace insiders whisper that the king, already battling his own health challenges, didn't need this kind of explosive confrontation adding to his stress. But here's where it gets even more dramatic. This wasn't just a one-time meltdown. Reports are surfacing that Harry has been pushing and pushing for months, demanding face-to-face meetings with his father, only to be turned away time and time again. Each rejection has added fuel to an already raging fire. And according to those in the know, Meghan Markle hasn't exactly been pouring water on those flames. Instead, sources speculate she's been fanning them, reminding Harry of every perceived slight, every injustice, every reason he should be angry at the family that once embraced him. The timing of this blow-up couldn't be worse for Charles. The king has been working tirelessly to maintain the dignity and stability of the monarchy while dealing with his cancer treatment. He's been showing up for public engagements, unveiling memorials, attending investitures, doing everything a monarch should do despite his private health battles. And then comes his younger son, allegedly screaming down the phone line about money, demanding royal funding, and seemingly oblivious to the fact that he walked away from royal duties years ago. What makes this situation even more explosive is what Harry allegedly wants. He's not just asking for a little help here and there. Sources claim he's demanding the kind of financial support that would rival what working royals receive. He wants security funding, property on royal estates, and ongoing allowances. And when Charles has refused, Harry's response has reportedly been nothing short of volcanic. But that was just the beginning of this unraveling disaster. Here's where Harry's rage reaches truly staggering levels. The Duke of Sussex has reportedly been watching from his Montecito mansion, seething with jealousy and fury, as his uncle Prince Andrew continues to live comfortably on the royal purse. And this, according to palace insiders, is the real trigger behind Harry's recent meltdowns. Andrew, who stepped back from royal duties amid scandal and controversy, still enjoys a lavish lifestyle funded by King Charles. He's living on a sprawling estate in Sandringham, with all the financial backing he needs, despite being a non-working royal, just like Harry. The hypocrisy of it all has Harry absolutely livid. Sources close to the situation claim Harry has been ranting to anyone who will listen about the unfairness of his father's financial decisions. Why does Andrew get to keep his mansion and his funding, while Harry and Meghan were stripped of Frogmore Cottage and cut off financially? In Harry's mind, the math just doesn't add up. He sees himself as the wronged son, the one who was forced out, the one who had no choice but to leave, and yet his disgraced uncle gets royal treatment while he's left scrambling. During these heated phone confrontations with Charles, Harry allegedly throws Andrew's situation in his father's face repeatedly. He demands to know why the rules seem to apply differently depending on which son or brother you happen to be. And according to royal watchers, Harry's argument isn't entirely without merit from his perspective. Both he and Andrew are non-working royals. Both have stepped away from official duties. So why the drastically different treatment? But here's what Harry conveniently forgets in his fury. Andrew never publicly trashed the royal family on international television. Andrew never sat down with Oprah Winfrey and accused his relatives of racism and cruelty. Andrew never wrote a tell-all memoir exposing private family conversations and humiliating his brother. Andrew, for all his faults and controversies, has kept his mouth shut about internal family matters. Harry, on the other hand, has burned bridge after bridge, monetizing his family's pain and privacy, and now he's shocked that his father won't reward that behavior with continued funding. The situation has become so toxic that palace aides reportedly dread whenever Harry's name appears on the king's call log. They know what's coming. Another explosive conversation filled with demands, accusations, and allegedly profanity-laced tirades about money. Charles, according to those in his inner circle, has tried to remain patient and understanding. He's tried to explain the differences between Harry's situation and Andrew's. He's tried to make his youngest son understand that actions have consequences. But Harry, perhaps fueled by Meghan's whispers in his ear, refuses to accept any explanation that doesn't involve him getting what he wants. And the anger just keeps building. Now let's talk about something that's been driving Harry absolutely insane. For months now, the Duke of Sussex has been desperately trying to arrange meetings with his father, only to be met with excuse after excuse, and each rejection has pushed Harry closer to the breaking point. Sources reveal that every time Harry has requested a face-to-face conversation with King Charles, the palace has come back with the same tired responses. His Majesty is resting. He's recuperating. He just had treatment. He needs a few days off. he's not available right now. And Harry might have accepted these explanations if it weren't for one glaring problem. While Charles is supposedly too ill or too tired to meet with his own son, he somehow finds the energy to appear at public engagements all over the country. There's the king, unveiling monuments and attending charity events. There he is at investitures, shaking hands and presenting honors. There he goes, meeting with dignitaries and carrying out his royal duties with apparent ease. The contradiction has Harry seeing red. Insiders claim Harry has pointed out this hypocrisy in multiple phone conversations with palace staff and even directly with Charles himself. How is it possible that the king is too unwell to spare 30 minutes for his own son, but perfectly capable of standing through hours-long public ceremonies? The excuses, according to those close to Harry, have worn dangerously thin, and with each new photo of Charles at a royal engagement, Harry's frustration grows exponentially. What makes this even more painful for Harry is the memory of September. He came back to the United Kingdom for the Well Child Awards, a cause close to his heart, hoping desperately to see his father while he was on British soil. But once again, the palace gates remained closed to him. Charles was too busy, too tired, too unavailable. Yet within days of Harry's departure, there was Charles, back in the public eye, looking perfectly healthy and engaged. The slap in the face couldn't have been more obvious. Palace sources suggest that Charles's avoidance isn't about his health at all. It's about protection. The king has reportedly grown weary of Harry's confrontational approach and constant demands. Every meeting, every phone call seems to deteriorate into arguments about money, security, and perceived injustices. Charles has confided in close aides that these interactions leave him emotionally drained and frustrated. So rather than subject himself to more abuse, he's simply chosen to keep his distance. But Harry doesn't see it that way. In his mind, this is yet another example of the royal family freezing him out, punishing him for daring to speak his truth, and treating him like an outsider rather than a son. The rejection fuels his anger, and that anger, sources speculate, is exactly what Meghan needs to keep Harry firmly on her side and firmly against his family. The freeze-out continues, and the rift grows wider with each passing day. Let's dive into one of the sorest points of contention between Harry and his father: the eviction from Frogmore Cottage. This isn't just about losing a house. For Harry, it represents something far deeper and far more personal. It's about being completely erased from the royal landscape, stripped of his last remaining connection to the only home he'd ever truly known. And the bitterness over losing that property continues to poison every interaction between father and son. Frogmore Cottage wasn't just any residence. Harry and Meghan spent millions renovating it, turning it into what they believed would be their permanent base in the United Kingdom. They poured money into that property, picked out every detail, imagined raising their children there during visits home, and then, in what Harry sees as a calculated move, King Charles took it all away. The eviction notice came, and suddenly the Sussexes were homeless in Britain, forced to rely on friends for accommodation during their increasingly rare visits. What drives Harry to absolute fury is watching his uncle Andrew continue to reside comfortably in Royal Lodge, a 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate. Andrew gets to keep his sprawling home despite being a non-working royal mired in scandal, while Harry and Meghan were kicked out of their comparatively modest cottage. The double standard is glaring, and Harry has reportedly thrown this comparison in his father's face during multiple heated exchanges. If Andrew can stay, why couldn't he? Charles's response, according to palace insiders, has been consistent but unsatisfying to Harry. Andrew never publicly humiliated the family. Andrew never went on international television to air private grievances. Andrew, despite his controversies, maintained some level of loyalty to the institution. Harry, on the other hand, declared war on the monarchy, monetized family secrets, and then expected to maintain all the perks of royal life. In Charles's view, you can't have it both ways. But Harry refuses to accept this logic. Sources close to the Duke claim he genuinely believes he's entitled to keep a property on the Windsor estate regardless of his working status. He points out that he's still a prince, still the king's son, still part of the family by blood. In his mind, Frogmore Cottage should have been his birthright, not something that could be snatched away as punishment for speaking out. The loss of that cottage represents everything Harry feels has been stolen from him. The argument over Frogmore has become symbolic of the entire breakdown between Harry and Charles. It's not really about the house anymore. It's about respect, about belonging, about whether Harry still has any place within the royal framework. And every time Charles sees Andrew comfortably settled at Royal Lodge while Harry fumes from California, it reinforces Harry's narrative that he's the victim of cruel and arbitrary treatment. The cottage may be gone, but the resentment it left behind burns hotter than ever. Now here's where things get truly fascinating, because behind every one of Harry's explosive confrontations with his father, there's reportedly a mastermind pulling the strings. Former palace staff members claim that Meghan Markle has perfected the art of manipulation, knowing exactly which buttons to push to keep Harry angry, isolated, and dependent on her. And her tactics, according to insiders, are as calculated as they are effective. The strategy allegedly starts with flattery. Sources close to the situation reveal that Meghan constantly reminds Harry of his glory days, posting throwback photos of him in military uniform looking fit and handsome, sharing images of him surfing and playing the action hero. She tells him he's gorgeous, that he's the better-looking brother, that he was always the most popular member of the royal family, and Harry, with all his deep-seated insecurities about living in William's shadow, drinks it all in like a man dying of thirst. Former staff members claim Meghan uses this ego-stroking to devastating effect. When Harry starts to waver when he considers reaching out to his family in a genuine way, she allegedly reminds him of his worth. She tells him he doesn't need them, that he's the true star, that the public still adores him more than William, and then comes the killer blow. She reminds him that his family doesn't see his value, that they've disrespected him, that they've treated him like he's nothing. The anger reignites, and Harry's resolve to fight hardens once again. But the manipulation goes even deeper. Insiders whisper that Meghan plays on Harry's financial anxieties constantly. She allegedly reminds him that he promised her a certain lifestyle, that he assured her they'd be taken care of, that he painted a picture of royal funding that never materialized. The implication, according to those who've observed their dynamic, is clear. Harry needs to fight for that money not just for himself, but to prove to Meghan that he can provide, that he's worthy of her, that he hasn't failed as a husband. This psychological game keeps Harry perpetually on edge, perpetually angry at his family for cutting him off. He sees every public appearance by William and Kate as a personal attack. He interprets every royal engagement as proof that his family is thriving while he struggles. And Meghan, sources speculate, is right there reinforcing that narrative, turning every slight into ammunition for their ongoing war against the monarchy. The most insidious part of this alleged manipulation is how Meghan frames herself as Harry's only true ally. She positions herself as the one person who truly understands him, who sees his value, who believes in him when everyone else has turned away. And Harry, isolated from his old friends and estranged from his family, clings to that validation desperately. Palace insiders suggest that Meghan has successfully created a world where Harry needs her approval and her support more than anything else, and that dependency keeps him fighting battles that only drive him further from reconciliation. Let's rewind to the moment that truly shattered whatever fragile trust remained between Harry and his father. March 2021. Harry and Meghan sitting across from Oprah Winfrey, preparing to detonate a bomb that would rock the monarchy to its core. And one of the most shocking revelations from that interview still haunts the relationship to this very day. When Harry looked into the camera and declared that his father had cut him off financially, the damage was instantaneous and, according to Palace insiders, possibly irreversible. That single statement sent shockwaves around the world. Here was a grown man, a prince in his 30s, complaining on international television that daddy stopped giving him money. The optics were catastrophic. People watching couldn't believe what they were hearing. Harry seemed completely oblivious to how entitled and childish he sounded. Most adults his age have jobs, pay their own bills, support their own families. But Harry expected the world to sympathize with his financial plight, as if being cut off from royal funding was some kind of human rights violation. What made that moment even more painful for King Charles was the public humiliation of it all. This wasn't a private family disagreement handled behind closed doors. This was his son airing their financial arrangements for millions of viewers, painting Charles as cold and unsupportive, making it seem like he'd abandoned Harry and Meghan to fend for themselves. The betrayal cut deep, and sources close to Charles say he's never fully recovered from the sting of that very public accusation. The truth, according to Palace insiders, is far more complicated than Harry's soundbite suggested. Charles didn't just cruelly cut Harry off without warning. He continued supporting Harry and Meghan financially well into their departure from royal duties, giving them time to establish themselves independently. But Harry's version of events made it sound like Charles heartlessly withdrew all support the moment they stepped back, leaving them penniless and desperate. The distortion of reality infuriated those closest to the king. What's particularly fascinating is how that Oprah moment continues to poison every financial discussion between father and son. Every time Harry now demands money, Charles reportedly can't help but think back to that interview, to the humiliation of being portrayed as a neglectful father on the world stage. It's created a toxic dynamic where Charles feels he can't give Harry anything without it looking like he's caving to public pressure, and Harry feels justified in his demands because he believes he was wronged. Tom Parker Bowles, a family friend, summed it up perfectly when he said his own father told him to get a job rather than sit around expecting handouts. That's the normal world. That's how most families operate. But Harry seems to exist in a bubble where royal funding is a birthright rather than a privilege tied to royal duties. And that Oprah confession remains the ghost haunting every conversation about money, a wound that refuses to heal no matter how much time passes. While Harry spirals deeper into bitterness and resentment from his Montecito mansion, his older brother William is experiencing something of a golden era. And that success, that rising popularity, that undeniable royal gravitas is eating Harry alive from the inside out. Every headline celebrating William feels like a personal attack. Every successful royal engagement feels like salt in Harry's ever-growing wounds. The contrast between the two brothers has never been more stark or more painful for the younger prince to witness. King Charles couldn't be prouder of his eldest son, and he's not shy about showing it. Palace insiders reveal that Charles regularly praises William's handling of royal duties, his dedication to the monarchy, and his steady leadership during challenging times. When Catherine was battling her health crisis, Charles reportedly gave William invaluable advice. He told him to keep working, to stay focused, to maintain the public schedule because that positivity and purpose would help them both get through the darkness, and William listened, earning even more respect from his father in the process. The bond between Charles and William has grown stronger with each passing year, while the relationship with Harry continues to disintegrate. Sources close to the palace say Charles sees William as the future of the monarchy, the steady hand who will guide the institution into a new era. William is everything a future king should be: confident, composed, dedicated, and most importantly, loyal. He doesn't run to television cameras to air family grievances. He doesn't write tell-all books exposing private conversations. He simply does the work, day after day, representing the crown with dignity. And then there's Harry, watching all of this unfold from across the Atlantic, seething with jealousy that he can barely contain. The book Spare revealed just how deep that jealousy runs. Harry actually wrote about his brother's receding hairline with cruel mockery, as if physical appearance was some kind of competition he could win. The pettiness was staggering, especially considering Harry's own hair loss was already well underway when he penned those words. But that's the level of resentment we're dealing with here. What really drives Harry mad is that William doesn't seem to care about the attacks. He's secure in himself, secure in his role, secure in his father's love and approval. William walks into rooms with natural confidence and authority. He's tall, commanding, and utterly self-assured. These are qualities Harry has always lacked, qualities he spent his entire life envying. And now, watching William thrive while he struggles to stay relevant selling cinnamon-scented Netflix content, the jealousy has reached toxic levels. Charles sees this dynamic clearly. He sees one son embracing his duties and another son destroying his own legacy out of spite. And every time Harry lashes out, every time he makes another demand or throws another tantrum, Charles is reminded of why William will make a far better king than Harry ever could have been. The winning streak continues for William, and the losing streak accelerates for Harry. If there's one issue that sends Harry into an absolute frenzy, one topic guaranteed to trigger an explosive confrontation with his father, it's security. The Duke of Sussex has become utterly consumed by concerns about protection for himself and his family, demanding that the British taxpayer foot the bill for his safety despite walking away from royal duties. And palace insiders whisper that Meghan has been instrumental in fueling this obsession, allegedly turning security into Harry's #1 battleground with the monarchy. Harry's demand is crystal clear. He wants the same level of taxpayer-funded police protection that working royals receive, even though he's no longer a working royal himself. He wants armed officers, secure transportation, and all the bells and whistles that come with being a senior member of the royal family. And when the British government refused to provide that security automatically during his visits, Harry took them to court. The legal battle has cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, with Harry losing at nearly every turn, yet still refusing to accept the verdict. What makes this situation particularly frustrating for King Charles is Harry's complete inability to understand basic logic. You stepped away from royal duties. You moved to another country. You rejected the institution and its responsibilities. Why on earth would British taxpayers continue funding your security? But Harry sees it differently. In his mind, he's entitled to protection because of who he is, not because of what he does. Being born a prince should be enough, regardless of whether he's actually serving the crown. Sources close to the palace suggest that Meghan has been whispering in Harry's ear about security threats for years, allegedly amplifying his fears and paranoia. She reminds him of Princess Diana's tragic death, plants seeds of worry about paparazzi and stalkers, and insists that their family is constantly in danger. Whether those fears are justified or manufactured is up for debate, but the result is clear. Harry has become absolutely fixated on security as the hill he's willing to die on, metaphorically speaking. During phone calls with his father, Harry allegedly brings up security funding repeatedly, framing it as Charles's responsibility to protect his grandchildren. The emotional manipulation is obvious. If Charles refuses to pay for security, Harry implies, then Charles doesn't care about the safety of Archie and Lilibet. It's a guilt trip designed to squeeze money from a father who already feels the weight of his fractured family. But Charles has held firm, much to Harry's rage. The irony isn't lost on royal watchers. Harry and Meghan chose to move to California, one of the most celebrity-saturated places on Earth, where they've actively courted publicity and media attention. They've done Netflix deals, podcast series, and carefully staged photo opportunities, and yet they simultaneously claim they need taxpayer-funded security because they're too famous and too endangered. The contradiction is glaring, but Harry refuses to acknowledge it. The security obsession continues, becoming yet another weapon in his ongoing war with his father and the institution that raised him. Here's where Harry's narrative truly falls apart under scrutiny. Throughout all his demands, all his confrontations, all his bitter complaints about being cut off and frozen out, Harry maintains that it's not his fault. According to the Duke of Sussex, the real villain in this story is the media. He claims that the press has deliberately sabotaged his relationship with his father, that journalists are the ones preventing reconciliation, that media coverage is the sole reason Charles won't meet with him or restore his funding. It's a convenient scapegoat, but palace insiders aren't buying it for a second. Harry has spent years blaming the media for absolutely everything wrong in his life. His unhappiness in the royal family? The media's fault. His decision to leave Britain? The media drove him out. His strained relationship with William? Media lies poisoned it. His financial struggles? The media won't let him and Meghan succeed. And now, his broken bond with Charles? Obviously the media's responsibility. The pattern of blame shifting is as predictable as it is transparent. But here's the uncomfortable truth that sources close to King Charles are willing to share. The media didn't make Harry sit down with Oprah and trash his family on international television. The media didn't force Harry to write a memoir exposing private conversations and mocking his brother's appearance. The media didn't compel Harry to leak stories, cooperate with unauthorized biographies, or allow his spokespeople to brief against the royal family constantly. Harry did all of that himself, with Meghan by his side encouraging every betrayal. Palace aides report that Charles has tried to explain this to Harry during their increasingly rare conversations. He's pointed out that actions have consequences, that public betrayals damage private relationships, that you can't monetize family dysfunction and then expect warm holiday gatherings. But Harry refuses to accept any accountability. In his warped worldview, he's the eternal victim, and the media is the eternal villain. Taking personal responsibility for the destruction he's caused would require a level of self-awareness that Harry simply doesn't possess. What particularly galling to those in Charles's inner circle is how Harry simultaneously uses and vilifies the media. He blames them for ruining his life while actively working with Netflix to produce content about his life. He rails against press intrusion while staging photo opportunities and leaking strategic stories through his PR team. He claims to want privacy while putting every detail of his grievances into a best-selling book. The hypocrisy is staggering, yet Harry seems completely blind to it. The reality, according to palace insiders, is brutally simple. The media didn't ruin Harry's relationship with his father. Harry ruined it himself through years of public attacks, financial demands, and entitled behavior. Charles would probably welcome reconciliation if Harry showed genuine remorse and stopped the constant onslaught of criticism. But as long as Harry keeps blaming everyone else for problems of his own making, that reconciliation remains impossible. The media makes a convenient villain in Harry's story, but it's just another lie he tells himself to avoid facing the truth. So where does this leave the relationship between King Charles and his youngest son? Are we witnessing the final chapter of their bond, or is there still hope for reconciliation somewhere down this painful road? Palace insiders are split, but the consensus leans toward a grim conclusion. The damage might be too deep, too public, and too intentional to ever truly repair. Harry has burned bridges with such spectacular efficiency that even his father's legendary patience may have finally run out. Charles's inner circle paints a picture of a king who has genuinely tried everything. He's offered olive branches, attempted conversations, and expressed willingness to heal the rift if Harry would just stop attacking the family publicly. But every gesture of goodwill has been met with more demands, more accusations, more leaked stories to friendly journalists. At some point, even the most forgiving father has to protect himself and the institution he serves. That point may have already arrived. What makes reconciliation particularly unlikely is Harry's apparent unwillingness to change course. He's dug in so deeply on his narrative of victimhood that backing down now would require admitting he was wrong about everything. Wrong about the racism claims, wrong about the cruelty allegations, wrong about deserving continued funding after abandoning royal duties. For someone as proud and stubborn as Harry has become, that kind of self-reflection seems virtually impossible. Then there's the Meghan factor. Sources close to the situation suggest she has absolutely no interest in reconciliation unless it comes with everything they've been demanding: money, property, security, apologies, and probably a restoration of their royal status. Anything less would be viewed as capitulation, as weakness. And Meghan, according to former staff members, doesn't do weakness. She's reportedly convinced Harry that they hold all the cards, that the family needs them more than they need the family. It's a catastrophically miscalculated position, but it's the one they've chosen. Royal watchers believe Charles has essentially made peace with losing Harry permanently. The king has his hands full with his own health challenges, with preparing William for kingship, with modernizing the monarchy for a new era. He simply doesn't have the emotional energy to continue dealing with Harry's endless drama and demands. The phone calls have become less frequent. The attempts at meetings have stopped. Charles has, sources suggest, quietly begun the process of moving forward without his youngest son in the picture. What this means for Harry's royal future is absolutely nothing. There is no royal future. That ship has sailed, burned, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Harry will remain the Duke of Sussex in title, but in practice he's an ex-royal living in California, increasingly irrelevant to the institution he once belonged to. His children will grow up American, disconnected from their royal heritage. His legacy will be defined by betrayal rather than service. So what do you think? Has Harry gone too far to ever come back from this? Can Charles forgive the disrespect and the demands? Or is this relationship truly beyond saving? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button and subscribe because the next video is waiting. And trust me, you won't believe what's coming next.